The Lone Voyage, the emergency session of the Galactic Trade Coalition, convened in the crystalline halls of Nexus Prime, where representatives from 47 species gathered to discuss what they called the human problem. Ambassador Zektar of the Vraxian Empire clicked his mandibles in amusement as he addressed the assembly. Esteemed colleagues, the humans have finally responded to our trade embargo. After 6 months of isolation, after we've cut off their access to quantum fuel and rare minerals, after we've blocked their merchant vessels from every major trade route in the galaxy, they have sent their answer. He paused dramatically, his 4 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. One ship, a single vessel, departed from their homeworld 3 days ago. The chamber erupted in what could only be described as laughter, though it came in many forms across the various species present. The crystalline Zelthrons chimed like wind chimes, the gaseous nebulites pulsed with bioluminescent humor, and the reptilian Saurak delegation hissed in what passed for mirth among their kind. "One ship," bellowed Commander Throck of the Corthian battle fleet, his massive form shaking with laughter. "Against the combined might of the Coalition, these humans truly are as foolish as we suspected." 3 billion kilometers away, the UES Defiance cut through the void like a silver needle threading black silk. Unlike the massive, bulbous vessels favored by most galactic civilizations, the human ship was sleek and predatory, its hull gleaming with an almost mirror-like finish that seemed to bend light around its edges. At 400 meters long, it was smaller than most Coalition cruisers, but there was something unsettling about its design that made even seasoned space travelers uncomfortable. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the patrol routes ahead. At 38, she was young for a deep space commander, but the silver streaks in her black hair spoke of battles fought in the outer colonies during the border wars. Her crew of 212 souls represented the best of humanity, volunteers who knew they might never see Earth again. "Status report," Chen said, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had earned her respect throughout the human fleet. "All systems nominal, Captain," replied Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb from the engineering station. "The new fusion drives are performing beyond specifications. We are maintaining 97% efficiency on the quantum cores." "Weapons?" Chen asked, turning to her tactical officer. "All rail cannons loaded and charged, Captain," responded Major Elena Vasquez, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "The new tungsten carbide rounds are reading green across the board. Point defense systems are online, and the experimental plasma arrays are showing full charge." What the Coalition didn't know, what their intelligence networks had failed to discover, was that humanity hadn't been idle during the embargo. While their merchants were turned away from alien ports, and their diplomats were ignored in Coalition chambers, human scientists and engineers had been working around the clock. The resources they'd been denied, they'd learned to synthesize. The technologies they'd been refused access to, they'd developed independently. And some of their innovations had surpassed anything the galaxy had seen. Dr. James Harrison emerged from the lower decks, his lab coat stained with coolant fluid and his eyes bright with excitement. "Captain, the adaptive armor plating is responding beautifully to stress tests. The nanomesh can redistribute impact force across the entire hull in microseconds, and the stealth coating, well, let's just we're about as visible as a shadow in space." Chen nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, Doctor. How long until we reach the first patrol zone?" Chen nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, Doctor. How long until we reach the first patrol zone?" 18 hours at current speed," answered Navigation Officer Lisa Park, her fingers tracing trajectories on the star chart. "We'll be entering Vraxian space just as their night shift takes over. Their sensors are less acute during crew changes." The bridge fell into a comfortable routine as the Defiance continued its journey. But in the mess hall, conversations buzzed with nervous energy. Corporal Jake Morrison sat with his squad, pushing reconstituted protein around his plate. "You really think we can pull this off?" asked Private Chen Wang, no relation to the captain despite sharing a surname. "I mean, it's the whole Coalition against just us." Sergeant Amy Foster, a veteran of the Kepler Station siege, looked up from her meal. "Kid, you know what the difference is between us and them?" They fight because their governments tell them to. We fight because we choose to. That makes all the difference. Morrison nodded slowly. Besides, they've never faced human engineering before. We don't build pretty ships that look impressive in parades. We build ships that work when everything goes to hell. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, coalition forces were mobilizing with casual confidence. The Vraxian Third Fleet, consisting of 12 heavy cruisers and 36 support vessels, had been dispatched to intercept the human ship. Admiral Krezith lounged in his command chamber, his multiple arms working various controls with practiced ease. "A single human vessel approaches our perimeter," reported his sensor operator. "Estimated arrival in 17 hours. "Magnificent," Krezith replied, his voice carrying centuries of military arrogance. "We shall give them the honor of a swift death. Perhaps their government will finally understand that the coalition's patience has limits." But as the hours passed and the Defiance drew closer to the patrol zone, something strange began happening. Ships that tried to scan the approaching vessel found their sensors returning confusing data. Sometimes the human ship appeared as a massive battlecruiser, other times as a small scout vessel. Electronic warfare specialists reported that their systems were being subtly influenced, though they couldn't identify the source. Captain Chen studied the tactical readouts as they approached the first checkpoint. "Major Vasquez, are you reading what I'm reading?" "Yes, ma'am. 48 vessels in a standard blockade formation. They're not even trying to hide. It's like they want us to see them." "They probably do," Chen replied grimly. "They think they're dealing with desperate humans making a final gesture. Dr. Harrison, is the chameleon array ready?" "Fully operational, Captain. We can appear as anything from a cargo hauler to a dreadnought. Their sensors won't know what hit them until it's too late." The Defiance decelerated as it approached the blockade, its hull beginning to shimmer and shift as the adaptive camouflage activated. To the coalition sensors, it appeared as a standard cargo vessel broadcasting a surrender beacon. Admiral Krezith received the report with satisfaction. "Excellent. They've come to their senses. Prepare a boarding party to accept their surrender. This will make an excellent example for the rest of their species." But as the Vraxian boarding shuttles approached, something went terribly wrong. The cargo vessel suddenly flickered and revealed its true form, while simultaneously every coalition ship in the area found their targeting systems compromised by cascading cyber attacks. The Defiance's point defense systems came online with devastating precision. The first shuttle exploded in a ball of superheated plasma before its pilot could even transmit a warning. The second and third followed within seconds, their wreckage spinning into the void. But that was just the beginning. "All weapons fire at will," Captain Chen commanded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were unleashing. The Defiance's rail cannons spoke with thunder that could be felt through the ship's hull. Tungsten carbide projectiles, accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, punched through coalition shields like they were tissue paper. The experimental plasma arrays discharged in perfect synchronization, creating cascading energy failures across multiple enemy vessels. Within the first 90 seconds of combat, 6 coalition cruisers were either destroyed or critically damaged. The survivors tried to retreat but found their navigation systems corrupted by human cyber warfare programs that were decades ahead of anything the coalition had encountered. Admiral Krezith stared at his tactical display in disbelief as his flagship shuddered under human fire. "Impossible! How can one ship do this much damage?" His question was answered when the Defiance's main cannon fired. The weapon, which coalition intelligence had dismissed as a standard naval railgun, revealed itself to be something far more devastating. The projectile that struck Krezith's flagship wasn't just moving fast. It was generating its own gravitational field, warping space-time around itself as it traveled. The impact didn't just punch a hole through the Vraxian ship. It created a localized gravity well that tore the vessel apart from the inside out, stretching its molecular structure until it simply ceased to exist as a coherent object. The surviving coalition ships watched in horror as debris from their flagship was pulled into an impossibly small point of space, creating a miniature black hole that lasted for exactly 0.7 seconds before evaporating in a burst of Hawking radiation. "This is impossible," whispered the sensor operator on the Coalition command ship. "The humans don't have this technology. No one in the galaxy has this technology." But they were wrong. Humanity had developed it in the depths of their isolation, driven by necessity and the absolute refusal to be dictated to by those who viewed them as inferior. Every insult, every dismissal, every condescending remark from Coalition representatives had fueled the fires of human innovation. Captain Chen watched as the remaining Coalition vessels fled in panic, their formations broken and their confidence shattered. "Set course for Nexus Prime," she ordered calmly. "Maximum speed." "Captain," asked Lieutenant Commander Webb, "shouldn't we pursue the survivors?" Chen shook her head. "No need. They'll carry our message for us. The galaxy wanted to see what humanity could do with just one ship. Now they're going to find out what we can do when we're really trying." As the Defiance accelerated toward the heart of Coalition space, emergency broadcasts flooded the galactic communication networks. The footage from the battle, transmitted by the fleeing Coalition ships, showed something that had never been seen before in galactic history. A single vessel from a supposedly primitive species had annihilated an entire fleet. The reaction was immediate and profound. Species that had laughed at humanity's foolish gesture were now frantically calculating how quickly they could recall their fleets from human space. Trade routes were being rerouted to avoid potential encounters with human vessels, and in the crystal halls of Nexus Prime, emergency sessions were being called to address what was now being referred to as the human crisis. Thunder in the void. News of the Vraxian fleet's destruction reached Nexus Prime before the Defiance did, carried by the panicked transmissions of the survivors. The crystal halls that had recently echoed with laughter now hummed with urgent, worried voices as representatives from across the galaxy tried to comprehend what had happened. Ambassador Zektar's confidence had evaporated entirely as he addressed the emergency assembly. "Esteemed colleagues, we have gravely miscalculated. The humans didn't send one ship as a gesture of surrender. They sent one ship because they only needed one ship." The Zelthran representative's crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy. "The tactical data is impossible to ignore. Their vessel demonstrated gravitational manipulation technology, adaptive cyber warfare capabilities, and weapon systems that appear to violate known physics. How did we miss this level of advancement?" Grand Admiral Sektos of the Coalition Defense Force stood at the central podium, his massive Corthian frame radiating grim determination. "Because we chose to see what we expected to see, rather than what was there. The humans have been isolated for 6 months. We assumed they were struggling. Instead, they were preparing." Deep space monitoring stations throughout Coalition territory began reporting the same disturbing phenomenon. The human ship wasn't trying to hide. It was broadcasting its identity on all frequencies as it approached Nexus Prime, moving at speeds that should have been impossible for a vessel of its size. But more troubling were the energy readings. The Defiance wasn't just fast, it was getting faster, as if its engines were feeding on the vacuum of space itself. Dr. Veltara, the Coalition's chief science advisor, presented her analysis to the increasingly nervous assembly. "Their propulsion system appears to be a zero-point energy extractee on array. They're literally harvesting power from quantum fluctuations in empty space. The theoretical framework has existed for centuries, but the engineering challenges were considered insurmountable." "Apparently not by humans," muttered the Sarek delegate, his reptilian features twisted with concern. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the Defiance's observation deck, watching the stars wheel slowly past as her ship continued its relentless approach to Coalition space. The battle with the Vraxian fleet had been just the beginning. Since then, they'd encountered 3 more Coalition patrol groups, each larger and better prepared than the last. Each engagement had lasted less than 10 minutes and ended with the complete destruction or surrender of the enemy forces. "Captain," called Major Vasquez from the bridge, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Nexus Prime. It's coming directly from the Grand Assembly." Chen made her way back to the bridge, where the main view screen displayed the ornate chamber where the galaxy's most powerful beings had gathered. Ambassador Zektar's image appeared, his 4 eyes reflecting desperate hope. "Captain Chen, I presume. I am Ambassador Zektar of the Vraxian Empire. On behalf of the Galactic Trade Coalition, I wish to open negotiations regarding the current misunderstanding." Chen's expression remained neutral. "Ambassador, there's no misunderstanding. For 6 months, you've treated humanity as a collection of primitive children who needed to learn their place in galactic society. You've strangled our trade, blockaded our colonies, and dismissed our diplomatic overtures with barely concealed contempt. Now you want to negotiate because we've demonstrated that your assumptions were incorrect. Captain, surely we can resolve this without further bloodshed," Zektar continued, his voice carrying notes of panic. "The coalition is prepared to lift the embargo immediately and restore full trade relations." "That's generous," Chen replied dryly, "but insufficient. You see, Ambassador, humanity has learned something during these months of isolation. We don't need your trade routes. We don't need your rare minerals. And we certainly don't need your permission to exist in this galaxy." The bridge crew of the Defiance worked with quiet efficiency as their captain spoke. Lieutenant Commander Webb monitored the quantum cores, which were operating at 112% of their rated capacity, something that should have been impossible but was merely Tuesday for human engineering. Major Vasquez tracked the deployment of coalition forces, noting with satisfaction that they were pulling back from every system along the Defiance's projected course. Dr. Harrison emerged from the lower decks again, this time carrying a datapad that glowed with promising readings. "Captain, the prototype weapon is ready for testing. The quantum disruptor array has achieved stable field generation. We can literally unravel the molecular bonds of any target within a 50-kilometer radius." Chen nodded approvingly, but kept her attention on the view screen. "Ambassador Zektar, let me explain humanity's position clearly. We're going to establish our own trade networks, our own colonies, and our own sphere of influence in this galaxy. We're not asking for your permission, and we're not seeking your approval. We're informing you of our intentions." The transmission from Nexus Prime crackled with interference as multiple voices tried to speak at once. Finally, Grand Admiral Sektos pushed forward, his massive form dominating the screen. "Human Captain, you speak boldly for someone commanding a single vessel. The Coalition Defense Force numbers over 10,000 ships. Do you truly believe you can face us all?" Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. "Admiral, let me share something with you. The DIT. Fiancé isn't just one ship, it's a proof of concept. While you've been debating how to handle the human problem, my people have been busy. 18 more vessels of this class are currently under construction in shipyards throughout human space. Within 2 years, we'll have 100. Within 5 years, we'll have 1,000. The silence that greeted this announcement was deafening. Every species in the coalition was performing rapid calculations, trying to determine what 1,000 ships like the Defiance could do to the existing balance of power in the galaxy. But Chen wasn't finished. "However, we're not unreasonable. Humanity has a simple proposal for the coalition. Recognize our sovereignty over a sphere of space extending 50 light-years from Earth in all directions. Grant our merchants the same trading rights as any coalition member, and most importantly, acknowledge that humans are not a subordinate species requiring galactic supervision." "And if we refuse?" asked Admiral Sektos, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Chen's expression hardened. "Then we'll demonstrate what human innovation looks like when it's applied to military conquest rather than peaceful exploration. Dr. Harrison, would you care to show our friends what the quantum disruptor array can do?" The science officer activated the prototype weapon, targeting a small asteroid in the system's outer belt. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The asteroid simply ceased to exist, its matter breaking down at the subatomic level and dispersing into harmless radiation. Where a mountain-sized chunk of rock had been moments before, there was now only empty space. "That weapon has a maximum range of 12 light-years," Chen said calmly. The production version will have considerably greater reach. Ambassados. The reaction from Nexus Prime was immediate. Species representatives began talking frantically among themselves, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of noise. Several smaller delegations immediately announced their withdrawal from any anti-human agreements. Ambassador Zektar, his earlier arrogance completely gone, spoke with obvious desperation. Captain Chen, surely we can reach an accommodation. The coalition has always valued diversity and peaceful coexistence. Have you? Chen asked pointedly. Because our records show that in the past 50 years, the coalition has absorbed or destroyed 17 independent civilizations. You've strip-mined the homeworlds of 6 species that refuse to join your trade network. And you've conducted pacification campaigns against any group that developed technology you considered threatening. The accusations hung in the space between them like a neutron star, dense with implication and impossible to ignore. Every species in the coalition knew the truth of Chen's words, even if they'd never spoken of it openly. Humanity represents something you've never encountered before, Chen continued. We're not a primitive species that can be bullied into submission. We're not a decadent civilization that can be absorbed through economic pressure. We're adaptable, innovative, and absolutely unwilling to accept a subordinate position in galactic affairs. The question you need to ask yourselves is simple. Do you want us as equals and partners? Or do you want to find out what we're capable of as enemies? The Defiance continued its approach to Nexus Prime, its weapons powered down, but its message unmistakably clear. Behind it, the wreckage of 4 coalition fleets drifted in the void, testament to the new reality that the galaxy would have to accept. Grand Admiral Sektos spoke again, his voice heavy with the weight of fifth inevitable change. What guarantee do we have that humanity will honor whatever agreement we reach? Chen's smile returned, but this time it was warmer, more genuine. Admiral, we're human. Our word is our bond, but we also understand that trust must be earned. We propose a trial period of 5 years. During that time, we'll establish our sphere of influence and develop our trade networks. If humanity proves to be a stabilizing force in galactic affairs, the coalition can choose to make our recognition permanent. If we prove to be a threat, well, you'll have 5 years to prepare for war. The transmission from Nexus Prime remained silent for long minutes as the coalition representatives debated among themselves. Finally, Ambassador Zektar spoke again, his voice carefully controlled. Captain Chen, the Galactic Trade Coalition accepts humanity's proposal. We will recognize your sphere of influence and grant full trading rights to human merchants. In return, we ask that humanity respect existing coalition territories and agreements. Agreed, Chen replied. Dr. Harrison, please transmit our complete technical specifications for the fusion drive to the Coalition Science Council. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. The effect of this gift was immediate and profound. The fusion drive technology that powered the Defiance was centuries ahead of anything the Coalition possessed, representing a quantum leap in space travel capabilities. By sharing it freely, humanity demonstrated both their advanced capabilities and their willingness to cooperate with former enemies. As the Defiance adjusted course away from Nexus Prime, Captain Chen addressed her crew over the ship's communication system. Ladies and gentlemen, we've accomplished something remarkable today. We've secured humanity's place in galactic civilization not through conquest or submission, but through strength demonstrated and wisdom applied. The galaxy now knows that humans are not to be underestimated, and more importantly, they know that we're willing to share the benefits of our advancement with those who treat us as equals. The cheers that erupted throughout the ship could be heard even on the bridge, where Lieutenant Commander Webb was already plotting a course back to Earth. Captain, shall I signal home about our success? Chen nodded, then paused thoughtfully. Include a note for the Admiralty. Tell them the galaxy is much larger than we thought, and there are wonders out here that we've barely begun to imagine. But also tell them that no one in this galaxy will ever again make the mistake of thinking humans are anything less than extraordinary. As the Defiance began its journey home, Its wake rippled through space-time itself, carrying with it the message that would reshape galactic civilization. Humanity had arrived, and the universe would never be the same.